right, everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Nursing Now podcast. I'm your host, Janelle McSwiggan, and I have a really exciting guest on. I have Sunny Kangora, and she is known as the teaching NP. So, um, Sunny is the developer of several nurse practitioner courses created for NP students, new grads, and NPs looking for a refresher for their skills. She breaks down the practical skills required for NPs entering clinical practice, like how to gather patient histories, identifying differential diagnoses, and understanding reviews of systems, performing physical exams, and develop management plans, to list just a few, which is really over-encompassing right there. So I can tell how valuable those resources are. And she teaches students throughout Canada and the United States. So her scope is really broad. So Sunny, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much, Janelle. It's a pleasure to be joining you as well.
Awesome. So how long have you been curating the Teaching NP?
I started just over 12 years ago. It always starts with an idea and starts out a little bit rocky. And then it just continued to grow and grow. And I think it was really seeing how I was able to make an impact on others and how these resources really were so helpful for NP students when they were entering into clinical practice, etc. And that's sort of where it started. I graduated, I was working in clinical and then had an idea because in where I live in BC, in Canada, we have to write something called an OSCE exam, and many provinces and states do use OSCE exams as part of teaching simulations within their programs. So it's not generally part of licensing for other states and provinces, but often used as a teaching tool to ensure that NP students or NPs entering practice are ready for clinical practicums. And often it's marked and graded, but it's a very high pressure, time sensitive type of exam. Lots of anxiety involved. And having gone through it myself, I noticed that I was able to create methods and techniques to really help guide my preparation process. And so one night I just thought, you know what, I wonder if I could help other people because that was hella stressful. And then lo and behold, I started out with a small group of students asking if they'd want to learn from me. And it just sort of from there, I started with a group of 5 students, a 1-day class, and then it just started to grow and grow from there. And since then, I have created various in-person courses, so ranging from 2 to 4 days. And then I also started to create e-courses through the through the pandemic. Started to create e-courses so that there was more availability to those who weren't able to travel. And so that took over a year to create various e-courses. And so I created a physical exam course, which includes 12 different systems from how to do a neurological exam, right down to various MSK. And then I created a nurse practitioner master course. So that's covering all of those foundational clinical skills, and then an OSCE prep course. And then I've started getting into some supporting NPs with interview prep. So it's just kind of continued to blossom.
Oh, yeah, I love how you said that you saw a need around you. I hear time and time again that nurse practitioners and nurses don't quite feel prepared when they're leaving school to be in the clinical world. So I can totally see how your resources are so valuable at the bedside. And even when I was in school and I did a skill, it wasn't the same as doing it without any support and at the bedside. Even like the same skill, just it hit totally different when you're on your own. So
Yes.
I love that you capitalized on that and that you saw um a strength of your own, which was like building these processes to study. So it's awesome that you built on that strength to create this like really lucrative business like 12 years later. Like the longevity of that is wild and just kind of speaks to the strength of seeing a need and then building on that need with a solution. Um, I also love that you said it started with a small idea because I feel like we see these titans and what they're doing, like you. The teaching NP is such a beautiful, over-encompassing thing. I saw some of your videos. I'm not quite sure where I saw them posted, but you just did like a quick, it was like a TikTok type video. But it was so good and comprehensive. I think it broke down two different types of nurse practitioners that you could do. And I think when we see someone so polished in like their top prowess of 12 years later, that we forget that it all starts with this like single idea. Like my business started because I had a fever and I was really sick and I was like lying there and I like my brain was just like going off. And I was like, oh, I wonder if this idea could work. And like 6 years later, it ended up working. So it's nice to hear that like everything just starts with this like small like match that lights this fire like 12 years later for you.
Amazing. And yeah, it's the small idea, right? That I think so many of us do have. And but the difference is are you going to take that first step to actually implement a plan to carry out the idea? And I think, Janelle, as you know, like being an entrepreneur, that shit is hard. And you have to continue to go through the hard and build the resiliency and the grit to keep on going. The harder it is, the more growth and development you're going to experience by getting through it and to the other side. And that prepares you for the next big challenge that will be bigger than the one that you just overcame, but you'll be equipped with the skills to overcome the next big challenge, to, grow and scale and make a bigger impact and reach more people that you can support and help. So that's pretty fascinating, though. You came up with an idea while you were sick with a fever, right? You
Yeah,
never know what
I
happens.
remember like lying on the couch and just like, I was like, oh, I wonder if I can create like a writing course that could help other nurses. And I was like, when I get off this couch and off of this fever, I'm gonna do that.
And you
And I
did just that,
did. So even like taking those small like reflective moments like wherever you are, like it doesn't have to be like this crazy, I don't know. Like I wasn't like pondering it by like a beautiful lake. I was literally like so sick on my couch. So
right?
wherever that like inspiration strikes you, just always take note of that. The need like around you.
Exactly. Yep.
I also like how you said that owning your own business definitely isn't easy, but the knowledge that you have compounds on
Exactly.
itself. Um, like setting up my own website was really challenging. Figuring out how to even like talk to people about my resources was really, really difficult to
Yeah.
me, and understanding like even how to market these days because it's all about like content creation.
Yes.
Like all of those things were so foreign at the time. And then now I feel like I'm just like an octopus with like eight different limbs doing everything, but like pretty easily. Like I don't feel like overwhelmed at this point. So it is pretty scary when you're looking at the path of owning your own business. But once you start to like overcome those smaller or those bigger tasks, they're not like looming issues anymore. So it's nice that you said that too.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, when you're in the nursing profession, I think most of us think we're going to be nursing.
Yeah.
And, for me, when it came to starting my own business, the concept of entrepreneurship was I didn't grow up around it. It wasn't an option in terms of career wise. I didn't have much knowledge around it. But once I started and saw the doors that opened and the ability to be my own boss, if I had ideas or I was able to just build on those and grow them and still make an impact. And the truth is as long as you believe in what you're doing and you know that what you're offering has significant value, the money will follow, right? And so that's like a secondary piece. But for me, it's always primarily that if I'm able to make an impact and support NPs grow, help them decrease their anxiety around becoming NPs or passing exams, then I have succeeded. That is the ultimate goal for me. Um, and I think as we just continue to grow and build the skills that are needed to build a business, like I wasn't coding when I graduated nursing, but when I started creating my e-courses, there was a whole skill set that I needed to learn when I worked with an e-course developer, website development, starting social media, content creation, all these skills that I never imagined doing with my nursing degree. And I think the big thing is, Janelle, is knowing that even though we're in nursing, it is absolutely okay to take a non-traditional path. So what are you passionate about? We are going to be working, for many, many years. So why not do something that we absolutely love? And, and it always starts with that idea. What can we do? What can we offer? What will fill our hearts? What will bring us joy? And that's the beautiful part about nursing or, being an NP is you can take that professional degree and combine it with another skill set. So that is the wonderful thing about becoming a nurse practitioner, I would definitely say.
I love that you said combining your nursing degree because I feel like so I've talked to a lot of people that are considering being a nursepreneur is like the new term, and a
Right.
lot of them are really hesitant because they don't want to leave behind their nursing identity. So I really like that you're not taking away that nursing identity. You're just putting like a new twist on it and I guess like really using your skill sets to another way. And I also really love that your whole business model really builds off of like your clinical knowledge as well, which like all nurses have.
Exactly.
So being able to capitalize that, create courses to not only support your community, but also that I guess builds on something that is so inherent in most nurses. Like this is like a really cool thing that I think most people can understand.
Absolutely. And I'm sure just as you can remember when you were a student, when I was building my courses and teaching, I always put myself in the seat of the learner because I had to prepare for a specific type of OSCE exam and I recognized what I needed in order to successfully pass that exam. And that wasn't given to me through your traditional master's program. I was not able to grasp concepts with the traditional teaching methods. So I did a lot of self-teaching, teaching myself various pathophysiologies, disease processes, physical exams, lots of hands-on practice, learning how to conceptualize various topics. And so as an educator, I always look at the perspective of the learner. What do they need from me so that they can process the information and retain it and be able to apply it in a practical setting. And I think that's the neatest part is me having been in those shoes as a student learner and knowing what did I need in order to be successful. And so that's what I always have in the back of my mind when I'm creating a new nurse practitioner resource or something that I think that will help support. And as of recent, I created a nurse practitioner job interview prep guide. And so, often we're so nervous when we're preparing for job interviews on what kind of questions are they going to ask? Are there going to be clinical questions? And so I created this guide with 25 sample questions as well as sample answers. And, it's just a guide for nurse practitioners to refer to work through each question. And what I recommend is if you have prepared for OSCEs, which are an objective structured exam, so it's like a performance exam where you have to examine and perform history takings in front of an examiner, you should take that similar type of preparation with your interview prep. And that means working through mock interviews, practice an interview from beginning to end. How are you going to walk in? How are you going to shake their hand? How are you going to greet? Um, and then working through various type of interview questions like clinical based questions, situational and behavioral questions, incorporating methods like the STAR method. So there are various gaps within support for nurse practitioners, and that my goal is to help support and fill those gaps.
I love that you're still building on your course material. I'm actually still building on my course material too.
Right?
Yeah, yeah. And it's for the same reason though, right? I'm a medical writer, so when I come across something and I'm like, oh, people might not know this, I want
Yeah,
to make a resource to support the community. And in the same way that you want to support nurse practitioners, I want to support medical writers that might be lost, confused, and just not know what they're doing and might kind of back out of the industry for that reason. It
right.
might like not feel like they're enough. Like imposter syndrome is so strong in like medical writers, nurses in particular, and I'm sure nurse practitioners as well as they're transitioning to the field. So I
Exactly.
feel like these resources are just so fabulous for them. So you have, for the people listening, you have online resources like e-courses, and then you have in-person sessions, which is so over-encompassing and very interesting to me for people that might be weighing their own options as an entrepreneur to maybe do in-person resources, like maybe become like a CPR instructor or something like that, or they're thinking about me maybe doing only online resources. Do you have any like pros or cons or things that you like better of one or the other that they might not have thought about?
Yeah, so I think there are definitely, benefits to either. So in-person teaching, I do 2 to 4 day in-person teaching. I think that face-to-face learning will always be such a different experience versus self-paced online learning, where you're working through modules at your own pace. In the in-person setting, you're able to read body language, facial expressions. I can generally observe how nervous a student might be or how anxious they might be. I'm able to have many side conversations with students to check in how they're doing throughout the in-person course, and that will give me an idea of how I can better support certain people. And then I think the other piece is within the skill set of a nurse practitioner, just like with an RN, that hands-on learning is so critical. So, for example, within the 4 day course, we go over how to gather a patient history, and there's patient scenarios that are provided and a template on how to work through a patient history. And so students are able to work in collaboration to work through each of the scenarios. And same with the physical exam day that I have as well in the 4 day course, where we work through various systems. And that means you're working through, for example, a neurological assessment of cranial nerves 1 to 12, demonstrating them with your partner. And so you really actually have to learn that technique. You have to understand what you're doing. And so that can be quite different in an online world where, you have access to an e-course and you have to have the discipline to work through each of the cases and the modules at your own pace. And that is, though, one of the benefits is that it is often self-paced learning. You have access to, for example, the e-courses I offer, it's lifetime access, and you can log in and log out as many times as you need. And work through as many times as you need to. But that might mean that if you're on your own and you don't have an NP colleague with you, you might be practicing physical exams on your husband, your boyfriend, your girlfriend. Some of my students practice on their pets. So it really varies. So you have to be a little bit more creative. But that being said, I think it really depends on the type of learning style that best suits the learner. And so I think each student needs to evaluate that for themselves and see what will be the best fit for them. And many students will often do both just so that they can benefit from each of the courses, like the e-course as well as the in-person course. So and the other piece is with e-courses, there is a passive element to it where I've put in over a year's worth of work into each of the e-courses. And so I feel like I have fine-tuned and revamped them to sort of answer every possible question that generally comes up. And so in that regard, you're able to address those things from within the e-course itself. So I think that's a great benefit as well for e-courses.
Yeah, I'll definitely agree with what you said about there being two separate groups of people that either like the support of hearing my voice,
Yeah,
and just knowing that another person is there and they're not just like screaming into the void of like a computer. And then there's
exactly.
other people that do not want to be bothered and they just want to log in at 3 a.m. and just like do their work in their like random pockets of time. And
Yeah,
I haven't seen one group be more popular than the other. I've had people ask about both options.
yeah,
I don't do in person, but I do like coaching. And I always say that like if people in the asynchronous course have questions that they can always contact me too.
right.
And people do seem to want to have that connection to an actual person. Just to have like that empathetic voice to know that like they're supported in that way, I think is like really important to quite a lot of people. And the more successful courses I've seen as well in other markets do seem to have some sort of a coaching package
Yeah,
with them as well. They are way more expensive than some of the other more passive courses, uh,
right.
but people do seem to really like those.
Yeah, and I think with the in-person, the other piece that comes with it is the amount of support you're able to provide, in the moment type of teaching, in the moment type of support that's needed. If, I see a student sort of unraveling or feeling like emotions are high, or they're feeling quite challenged with the topic that we might be covering, I'll have students say, like, I don't think I can grasp this information. I don't think I'll ever learn how to do these physical exams to the level that they need to be as a nurse practitioner. But I can confidently say if you put the work in and you have systems in place to learn the techniques, for example, of physical exams, it is very doable. But the piece is that often the professional, like the traditional programs out there, they don't always cover the physical exams or certain teaching topics the way that the learners always need to. Some schools do a fabulous job. But for some programs, they're just not there yet, or they just haven't changed their curriculum for whatever reason.
Yeah, I have heard that time and time again that not all NP schools or RN schools are made
Yeah,
the same. I used to tutor nurses online, and I was very surprised at some of the questions I would be asked.
yeah,
So
exactly.
yeah, but it was nice to offer support in that way. And you don't have a background in education like clinically, right? Which I think is awesome. Yeah, I love that. I love when nurses aren't or nurse practitioners aren't limited by their educational background and they don't use that as a barrier to start their own business. And that they're just using like their innate ability to educate people around them to just pick up on the signs of someone needing assistance and to speak articulately. So I actually love when people are practicing outside of a specific like degree like education. So that's awesome to hear that you don't have a degree in education.
Yeah, and Janelle, that the way I gauge how well I'm doing is based on the feedback and the impact that I've made on hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of students across Canada and the US. And they the feedback that comes is often that you're a natural born educator, that you have made such an impact in my nurse practitioner journey. And that's what I will always gauge my level and ability to teach in, an effective, efficient, and supportive way. And I have found that my students have always been my biggest motivating factor. And any problem that they have, when it comes to their learning, I have been able to solve, or I will figure out a way to solve it for them, in order to make sure that they can acquire the skills that they need. Because again, not everybody learns in the traditional methods that are out there.
I absolutely believe you when you say that. And I'm, like I said, just super excited that you're working outside of a traditional degree to provide that support for you, for others. I
Thanks.
can tell that you're so passionate about this too. And I've said it multiple times, but it is such a need. I've talked to so many nurse practitioners that feel like they left their school and they're still like not quite sure what they're supposed to do. So you're really giving back to the nursing community as a whole, which is just like so awesome to see. And I know I love helping nurses. Like there's no better feeling when I get to help a nurse.
Thanks, Janelle. Yeah, I think we got to move away from the horizontal oppression, right? And nurses eating their young. I know it's a big concept within the RN world or RN profession, but it still happens in the NP profession, right? Not everyone's going to be supportive, but my goal is that if I can make that impact on my students, that I hope that they recognize how they can make an impact on a student, as they continue to progress in their career. Everyone is trying to learn. Everybody is juggling many, many different factors within life. They have young families, work, clinical, school, so everyone's plate is full. So how do we be that much kinder when it comes to the learning environment and just supporting one another? Because we're in a caring profession, we're giving a lot to care for the various patient populations that we care for.
I couldn't agree more. I actually just connected with a nurse on LinkedIn, and her tagline is "Nurses feed their young," to kind of push back on nurses eat their young, and
Amazing.
I love that. I
Love
love
it.
that people are starting to push back on that.
Yeah.
Because the world, like you said, is hard. It's cruel enough. The least we can do is build our community up and at least be nice from within. Um,
Exactly.
so do you support all NPs regardless of specialty, or do you niche down to a particular specialty?
Yeah, so for the students that I support, it's generally NPs graduating from a family program or an adult program. Some of the concepts that I teach do include pediatrics and obstetrics as well, but it's really honing in on those primary foundational clinical skills of practice. So, how do I, if a patient comes in complaining of burning with urination, how do I identify the differential diagnoses and complete a focused patient history, develop a plan for this patient? How do I identify what workup do I need to order? And then what kind of follow-up do I need to incorporate? So that's really the skills that will set you up for success in any specialty that you do. And even from when I studied for my own OSCE exam 12 years ago, I still incorporate certain history taking skills that I taught myself to this day in neurosurgery, where I currently work as a nurse practitioner. So, that is the value of having a very strong foundation of those practical clinical skills.
I couldn't agree more with that either. I think it all comes back to going with the basics, and you don't know what you don't know, especially when you're trying to treat a patient. So I feel like it all comes back to either patient history or patient assessment. Um,
Yeah.
So, how did you get started when you were first doing the teaching NP? I feel like, again, you are such a titan in what you're doing that nurses that are listening may struggle to understand how you got there. So, what were your first couple of steps for people that just want to latch on to, like, okay, these might be the first couple of things I want to start thinking about if I'm starting some type of a business?
Yeah, I think it's first identifying what's the idea? Like, what are you looking to do? The second piece is doing market research. Is the market already saturated? You can still do something that already exists, but the difference will be is that it's going to be you doing it, which might bring a different lens and perspective to it. So it's okay if, you're doing something similar that's already out there, but you do want to be mindful of how saturated the market is in certain areas. I think that's a key piece. I think also recognizing, is there a gap in the market? Is this a niche area that you're able to fill a need and a need that can continue to grow? For example, for myself, the NP profession is just growing. And, the NP scope has grown significantly and substantially that NPs are being incorporated in all areas of healthcare, primary care, acute care, peds, obstetrics, cardiac clinics, and neurosurgery, you name it, and NPs are there and they're in high demand as well. So I think those are the first steps. And then creating almost like an outline of what you want to create, a step by step. You don't need to write out a whole business plan, but for me, it started with, you know what? My first idea was, let me ask a few students if they would like to learn from me for one day. I then created a learning plan, of what I'm going to cover that day. So starting small, brainstorming those ideas of what it will look like. And then it started with creating templates. So let me create a history taking template. Let me then create a management plan template. Let me create a template on how to perform a knee exam where you can check all of the various ligaments within the knee. And as I went, I evaluated and reflected, anytime I taught so that I could grow and develop further from each of my teaching days. And I think that is the key takeaway is you come up with an idea, you apply it, and then what worked and what didn't work. And then what didn't work, you're going to troubleshoot and build on top of your existing plan. And then you just continue to do that. And I still continue to do that to this day, like I'm sure you do as well, Janelle.
Oh, I can tell that you're such a good teacher just based on how you broke all of that down. Like all of your students are so lucky to
Oh,
have you.
thank you. Yeah. Thank you.
Um, I definitely started the same way. I started just with like a simple fever idea, and then I was like, let's do some market research. And for people that keep hearing the term market research and they're like, what is that? It could be as simple
Right.
as Googling to figuring out what something is, hopping on social media. Reddit is huge, and there's all different subreddits. So there's a subreddit for nurse practitioner, a subreddit for medical writing for nurses, endless as far as that. Start talking to your peers that are in these areas. All of that is market research. Just figure out what the trends are. If there's too many people in one area for like a certain business plan, it might not be the best business plan for you, but you can use that as a jumping off board to create
Yeah.
something else if you see a need there. So that's all that market research is. I also love that you brought up that you started with templates. You started with one thing that sparked another thing and sparked another thing. That's definitely how I started too. I think I started with making a list of questions that I was confused about and I didn't understand when I was budding medical writer. And then I was like, I'm
Right.
gonna answer these questions. And then the list kept going longer. I think I started with templates, and then I was like, let's make this into a workshop. The
Yeah.
workshop grew, it became a course. So
Yes.
I think if you can just figure out your need, or what someone else needs, make sure that it's not saturated and that it makes sense, it's a viable option, and
Yeah.
then just get that ball rolling with one thing, and that one small thing can spark other uh
Ideas and
yeah, thank you. Oh my gosh. Yeah, other ideas.
resources. Yeah.
What is your best advice for nurses listening out there that might want to be doing something similar, whether it be in-person classes, educating their peers, digital content? What advice do you have for people listening?
I think I think my advice would be is first identifying what it is you want to teach. Are you passionate about it? Are you an expert in the field, or can you somehow become an expert in the field? There's the rule of 10,000 hours, right? To become considered an expert in a certain area. And so applying those 10,000 hours and continue to build on that. And then I think it really is, how do you roll it out? What is it going to look like? And you have to really break it down. Do you want to be in the online space, or do you want to be in person teaching, face to face, traveling, right? So you have to identify what area and what actually is going to work and fit within your life. It also requires many, many compromises, right? Depending on if traveling and in-person teaching is what you love to do, then just consider how those things will impact, but know that the entrepreneur journey comes with a lot of sacrifice, and you have to be ready to get uncomfortable. But with being uncomfortable comes significant growth and development, and that allows you to build greater resources and greater products for your specific audience, right? And that's the only way that you're going to get there, is you got to get uncomfortable and you got to be gritty.
Absolutely. I keep calling owning my own business like the most scary and fun chess game ever because I'm like, what does this move do? I have no
Yes.
idea, but I'm gonna make it, and it might be a good idea or I might regret this move. But the thing is, I'm making the move. I'm in charge. So whatever move I'm making, I own it completely. And there's a lot of like freedom and invigorating feelings that come along with that. And even if it's not my smartest business move, like, you know what, that's okay. I'll get them next time. Business owning is tough, but there's a lot of, like you said, personal growth that comes with it.
Yeah. And then having that growth mindset, so if you do encounter a challenge, you have to be good to yourself. You have to be good to your mind. And that means accepting the challenge and telling yourself that you will get through the obstacle, rather than this is the end of my business. Like, I can't do this anymore. Like, how badly do you want it? You really have to invest a lot into it. But when you are passionate about something and it lights a fire in you like nothing else, most entrepreneurs, they keep going because there
Mhm.
is an internal driving force that keeps them going up against the hard stuff, that keeps them overcoming challenges and obstacles. And that is how often you will grow and develop within yourself, as an entrepreneur, but also for your own business.
hmm I've definitely had those moments where I haven't had the growth I've wanted, or I haven't met
Yeah.
a goal that I've wanted, or I've just something hasn't played out how I wanted it to. And what really helps me is just reflecting on the last year and what I
Yes.
have accomplished. Or I'll look at my business goals from last year and I'll be like, I can't even believe that was a business goal because I'm so far past that now. So
Yes.
like you said, having grace with you because we
Yeah.
are so capable as business owners and the growth will be huge in this space. So even if you do have setbacks, just to stick with it.
Yeah.
Thank
And
you so much for all of this. This was so incredibly helpful.
amazing, Janelle. And I will say, as you grow as an entrepreneur, be mindful of putting yourself in a box. I think it's very key to start with that one thing. There's even a book out there called The One Thing. That's a great read. And building on that one thing, one product, what is it that you really want to get out there? And then expanding on various things, right? And I think the key is that not limiting yourself. Like, so if you create that one thing that does well, the next thing might be creating a membership for your whatever community it is. Maybe it's doing one-on-one coaching. Maybe it's traveling and doing speaking, engaging in speaking opportunities. And so I think if we stay closed-minded, the universe will not hear what we actually want, right? So we have to put it out there and we have to live in that.
Yeah, I think definitely being open helps with that.
Mhm.
Networking helps with that. Bouncing ideas off of other entrepreneurs definitely helps with that. Membership
Absolutely.
was not even like within my realm until I connected with another entrepreneur that was running her own membership.
Yeah,
So just being open-minded and collaborative with other creators can be incredibly valuable. So also not putting yourself like on an island by yourself. Just because you're the owner of your business doesn't mean that you have to do everything alone. And there's a lot of growth and collaboration in this industry.
absolutely. Yep.
Well, thank you so much for coming on today. This was such a good episode. I think everyone is going to learn so much about how to run a business, especially if they have an interest in teaching. And I think everyone is really invigorated by the fact that you don't need an additional degree to capitalize on some of your strengths like you had. So, Sunny Kangora, thank you so much for coming on. Everyone, the Teaching NP is her resources. I will have everything in the show notes below. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Janelle.